This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Cannabinoid Nation.
As an entrepreneur, we all know that starting a business is super difficult, and it's especially difficult in the cannabis and hemp industries. Understanding the regulatory compliance framework in a given state, having adequate equipment for your grow operation, developing and implementing a business marketing plan to drive sales can be overwhelming for most operators, and in most cases, not the best use of their time. Fortunately, the team of consultants and specialists at Cannabinoid Nation provide best-in-class industry solutions that aim to increase the likelihood of success for growers, processors, and manufacturers. Visit their website to learn more about their best-in-class solutions at cannabinoidnation.com. That's cannabinoidnation.com. Cannabinoid Nation, the cannabis and hemp industry's premier brokerage and consulting firm. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Arend Richard. He's the co-founder at WeedTube. Arend, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. And I got to tell you, I'm going to start off as a digital marketer and a fellow content creator. I got to give you some respect, man. And, you know, I've said this before on the podcast. I'm still in Instagram jail. My account is my other business, which is in the cannabis industry. And so you're one of the guys that, you know, has also been affected like many cannabis operators in this space, but you stepped up and you actually did something about it and you created WeedTube. So first off, appreciate you. Glad you're here on the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how all that played out?
Sure, yeah. Couldn't have done it without a lot of other people too. I appreciate that so much. And, you know, I had a big hand in it, but there were a lot of other people involved.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I just love to give credit to the whole team because
I know that's the way a leader should be, man. That's awesome. Yes.
there's like a core group of like 8 to 10 of us who were all YouTubers who were deleted in February-ish of 2018. And once we all started getting deleted, we kind of all came together to start the WeedTube. But prior to that, even, my history was I was a YouTuber. I built a channel up to 190,000 subscribers, which is no small feat for cannabis channels back in 2018.
Not at all. No, that's an amazing feat. Yes.
And I was known around the internet back then as the gay stoner, which nobody really calls me that anymore. Now they just call me the co-founder of the WeedTube, but I'm still a gay stoner, very much so.
Sure.
And made videos educating people about cannabis, using cannabis a bit, exploring it as it was legalized here in Colorado. It was a big part of my life after medical legalization happened here. I was born with a blood cell disease called mastocytosis, and took a lot of like different pills and drugs throughout my life to sort of mitigate the side effects of that situation. And when medical marijuana was legalized here in Colorado, my doctor, who was like a specialized doctor for mastocytosis, had like 20 patients across the United States that he was working with that had it. He was like, "You're one of the only people that can try cannabis as a solution to this disease. I want you to go ahead and get started on it." And it changed my whole life. Now I take 1 antihistamine a day and cannabis does everything else.
Wow. And so
Yeah.
prior to that, it was really just, you know, for medical purposes, you hadn't really kind of recreationally used it or been around it at all. So this was new
I
to
mean,
you?
I did the few times in high school sort of thing that everybody did, and those were all fun. You know, like I had my super laughy times in high school,
Sure.
but I didn't start smoking consecutively until I was like 23 years old, probably.
Okay, got you. Yeah. And you know, for any kind of just typical stoner, and myself included, you start out, you just enjoy it for the recreational purposes. But you know, even from my own perspective, as I've entered the industry, I've just learned so much on the therapeutic, the medicinal. I mean, there's so much more to the plant, right?
You
So
can smoke weed to have as much fun as you want, but you tell me you don't come out the other side a different person and a better person, I won't believe you.
I 100% agree with that. Yes, which is why I'm so dumbfounded with, you know, the federal regulation and the pushback still by the prohibitionists, but that's a whole other separate conversation. And so when you kind of entered this content creation field, specifically in the cannabis industry, did you just see it as an opportunity? I mean, you said you already were a content creator, so I guess this was just a natural transition to kind of pivot and just start to focus your content on cannabis education?
Yeah, it was a natural pivot. It was like truly, like, I just loved YouTube, and I was making videos, and I was trying some things out for about 6 months, and I was still, consuming cannabis, just not on camera. Never thought to do that. And then I saw, like, I don't remember what inspired me, but it was like some sort of tutorial video, and I was like, oh, you know what? When I started smoking weed, smoking out of a pipe was really intimidating. And I remember, like, not knowing how to do it and being afraid to try, or like make a fool of myself in front of my friends the first time I smoked weed, or like a bong or anything. And so I made a video that was like a video tutorial how to smoke weed from a pipe, explaining it in like the most basic way that anyone who had ever done it before would understand. And I think that video went to like 500,000 views in like 6 months. And then that was kind of like, okay, there's a niche that needs to be filled, but also, like, I love weed so much, so it's not a bad niche to fill.
Right. And content like that, the ones that set fire, you mentioned something so basic, but it's a good thing because it shows how much interest there is from the outside community, right? I mean, anybody who consumes cannabis would know how to smoke from a pipe. But the fact that that video got so many hits and it took it down to a level that everyone could understand who are interested, I mean, that's a big factor, right? So is that kind of how you structure the content that you create now?
Oh,
Or
I've never structured a thing of content in my life. That is like my biggest downfall. I mean, sometimes for sure. I'm kind of more of a I
do you
see.
storyboard? Like, do you have buckets of like content that you focus on? Like, there's got to be some kind of method to the madness, or not?
There's methods to madness in every other aspect of my life, in running a business, in building a community, in like how I exist as a human being. But and I see other people in content do it very well. Like, they plan out what they're doing with content. Me, I'm just sort of like, I just have inspiration, and then it just happens. You know what I
Just
mean?
happens. Yeah.
I wish it was more. It should be more architected. It should be.
Well, when you talk about, so tell us about, like, when that content, that piece took off, how to smoke out of a pipe, what else did you do? And what else kind of appealed to your audience?
Yeah, so then there was like the natural progression of like how to smoke weed from a bong, how to use a grinder, how to keep your bong clean, the basic stoner essentials things. I ran through all of those things in probably like the first year, and then it evolved into sort of more of like consuming with my followers in a way that was entertaining, and then it became less about smoking the weed, and it became more about what my thoughts were while stoned, basically. You know what I mean? And then
Mhm.
I kind of have this like trajectory then that turned into stoner thoughts, is what I call it. I had a series on YouTube and now on the WeedTube called Stoner Thoughts, where I would just get super high and talk about, conspiracy theories, aliens, is Beyonce in the Illuminati, just different things like that.
Man, I'm definitely gonna listen to those because I'm all about kind of going down different rabbit holes, because
Well, let me tell you something. You can't, because YouTube deleted all of them.
okay, so I was gonna get to that because
Yeah.
okay, so let's preface that with this, okay? For those listening, um, there's some people that have this perspective of YouTubers, and I'm doing air quotes, and that they have this fame and they don't work hard and they're in their mom's house and they're doing it is a lot of work. It's a lot of ideation, whether you get your content creation through inspiration, like you mentioned, or other ways of methods of madness that you have. But it's thinking of the content, capturing the content, editing the content, writing, messaging for the content. I mean, it's a lot of work. There's a lot that goes into it. So as you accumulated 190,000 followers on your YouTube channel at the time, which was focused on cannabis education, and as you mentioned, it morphed into something else. You wake up one morning, and what do you see? What happens that dreadful day?
Oh, wow. I wish I could remember the actual day. It's sort of like it's sort of like a month in which I remember like all of my friends getting deleted, right? And like me getting deleted. There was like a month in which it all kind of happened, and sort of like every day in that month, I always say I'm so lucky to have been involved with the team of people that got to start the WeedTube, because I can't imagine what it would have been like to go through that, losing all of, like whether people want to believe it or not, like that was my career. That's how I made
For
money.
sure. Yeah.
I was more successful at that than I was in anything else in my life. It was like, I a lot of people assume a lot of things about me, but I didn't come from, like wealth or anything like that. And so like to truly have done something with my life where I wasn't just working for someone else to actually like build a successful life for myself,
Preach. Yes, I
it was
agree.
like really, really incredible. And I was so thrilled with that. And to have that taken away, if I had not been part of the original WeedTube people who came together to start the WeedTube, I can't imagine what that would have been like for me. Like, I think it would have caused like a huge depression. But because I was part of the WeedTube team, it was also exciting. It was almost like delete me. Do it, delete me. I can't wait till you delete me, because I'm just over here ready for the next thing. Which, in the long run, it is what it is. But yeah, I think if I hadn't had the WeedTube, it would have been a very different set of emotions. And I feel for the people who went through that sort of deletion process all on their own, even though they didn't have to, but you know what I mean? Like,
Sure. You mentioned at the beginning that, of course, you weren't the only one that got WeedTube off the ground. So is there anybody that you notably want to call out and kind of talk about how you guys started to kick off that process?
yeah, absolutely. So, Stoned Alone, very talented filmmaker. He was the first one to get deleted out of all of our friend groups. He was sort of like we call him like the martyr for WeedTube, because once he was deleted, we were like, okay, this is a real problem. This is not just us getting strikes. This is like YouTube has it out for us. And so, definitely Stoned Alone. Shouts out to Stoned Alone. MacDizzle 420 is one of my co-founders as well. She um, was part of a huge channel on High Rise TV on YouTube that had a show called Two Girls One Bong, which is like one of the longest running and most successful cannabis related programs on YouTube. Huge following. Her and Joya G, both of them also got deleted. Silence Tippy was deleted. Strain Central was deleted. Those two weren't involved with the WeedTube stuff, but just throwing names out there. Yeah, I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
tons of people.
And that was like part of that purge. You said so that was just when it was just in a given month, there were just um YouTube influencers. I don't know if there's a better word that you'd like me to use, but I mean, they had influence within the platform related to cannabis. And then boom, that month, YouTube just starts going after them.
Yeah, it was like out of nowhere too.
And what
Out
year was
completely.
that? Was that 2019? Was that
2018, February of
2000?
2018.
Okay. Wow. So it's not easy to build and launch a new platform, So how did
No,
you
it's really not, Kevin. You have no idea how much it's not easy to
I
do.
mean, it's incredibly difficult, right? I mean, there's raising capital, there's creating a prototype or an MVP, there's testing with users, there's tweaking the platform, there's going to market, there's I mean, I can't even imagine. So,
And imagine you've never done any of it before. Any
right.
of it. And
So
you're learning as you go. Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at. So how did you even embark on that task?
I've always just kind of been a person who I'm always the one who, when like in a group of friends, if someone's like, let's do this, and then someone else is like, you can't do that, that's not going to work, I am always the person that's like, yeah, you can, like, we can figure it out. Like, I don't know what it is, but I will just push through. I don't It was a lot of trial and error with the WeedTube at first. When we first started, we were running off of just a basic WordPress site, and we didn't like own any of the technology ourselves, so it wasn't really like as safe as we wanted it to be, because many of the different services and we were using to run the WordPress site back then could have come in and done the same thing YouTube did and been like, this doesn't align with us and you can't use our stuff for it.
Right.
But we had that first WordPress site. It was very clunky. It did not work very well at all. And then of course we went overseas to develop our first website that was our own technology and our own iOS and Android apps, so that we could have like our own technology completely. And that's a whole other experience, developing your own technology, but then doing it overseas, where there's like a language barrier and your team of developers are up opposite hours that you are. So that was a whole other learning experience.
Was the team in Europe or India? Just
India.
curious. India.
It was an
Okay.
Indian team, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were wonderful, and they did a great job. And it really was beautiful. I got to go to India with our lead developer for the WeedTube.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
it was
Yeah.
really fun. It was great. There's a whole 2 videos of it on my WeedTube channel called Arend Goes to India, the movie. You should check it out. It's so good, very entertaining.
I will.
Um, that was like a whole learning experience in itself too, because like ideally people would love to have the app developed like here with American developers here, but I mean, oh my gosh, you're talking about to employ one American developer is at least a 6-figure sum of money, whereas developing an entire platform and 2 apps with the whole team was like relatively, let's throw a random number of like $50,000.
Right.
It's
Right.
And when you don't have all the capital infusion in the world because you're telling all of these investors, even in the cannabis space, like, here's what we're doing, here's why it's valuable, and they're just saying, I don't really see how there's value in that.
And they want to see it working. They want to see users before they probably give that seed A or seed B round, right? You kind of have to get something going that has a pretty significant user base to where you can approach a private equity investor, right?
I don't know, because there's a couple other social medias in the cannabis realm, and I'm not naming any names, that have significantly less users than us now, and significantly less than what we did when we started, that have raised millions. So
Huh.
I'm not so sure what you need to raise money. And it might not sound great to say this. I'm kind of like an alternative business person in this world, right? Like I did not get into what I'm in right now to make money. I got into starting the WeedTube because I had nowhere else to go with my creativity. And
Right.
neither did hundreds of other people. And then a community continued to be suppressed across all other social medias. And I wanted to fight for that community. I didn't get into it to be like, boardrooms, here's a projection. Like, I'm not losing sleep over owing someone money. That's not my taste. That's not what I want my life to be. So I'm not really sure how these other social medias have convinced people to give them money, because I have never tried to do it. We were very lucky to find an angel investor who believed in the importance of cannabis censorship. Well, first of all, to start the original WeedTube, we raised like almost $10,000 in 48 hours from our followers to build it. And
So like a
then
crowdfunding thing first. Okay.
GoFundMe.
Yeah,
Yeah, GoFundMe.
GoFundMe. Okay.
And then after that, we got the angel investor who contributed the money to build the app and to do a really incredible launch party for the community in Los Angeles. We had one of the coolest things ever. It was at the Avalon in Hollywood, which was where the Beatles played their first show for 2019. And we had like the front of it was all decked out with like WeedTube stuff. It was like one of the highlights of my life,
That's
truly highlight.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool. We were so lucky to find this angel investor who just kind of like funded everything in a way that we never went into debt, but we had like a good enough program to give people. You know what I mean? It was like, it was sustainable.
Right. Right.
So whenever people talk about, oh my gosh, there's a dog on your camera and it's so cute. How cute was that dog?
Oh, that's Toby. Yeah.
Hi, Toby.
We have 3, so we got a little wolf pack over here.
Big dog fan over here. Um, but yeah, I don't know, the investment thing and the business end of things. It's just crazy because I just have this belief that I want to sleep well at night, and I can't sleep well owing someone money that I'm not sure I'd be able to get them back.
You know what? I can relate when you say, so like you're a creative, right? And you're
Yeah.
passionate about the plant and what it's done for you in terms of its efficacy in helping with your it was a cell deficiency that you mentioned. I
It's a
forget the name.
blood cell disease. It's called mastocytosis.
A
Basically,
blood
white
cell
blood cells
disease.
attack red blood cells. Not fun.
Got you. Okay. So yeah, I just want to make sure I got it right. Thank you
Mm.
for clarifying. And then, there's other, right. So I lost my train of thought. Oh, no, my point was is that I understand your passion, but and that business angle, it kind of naturally comes as you build a successful platform, right? So how are you dealing with that? Like, have you kind of decided as the co-founder to take a step back and maybe some of the executive leadership roles and be like, okay, I'm going to stay here. You guys run the business. Like, how involved are you on that side? Because I totally get that. I get it.
Um, well, I would say what I say to people is I'm the one that wakes up and makes sure things get done still to this very day. Um, and I have my job with the WeedTube because like I originally identified as like the CEO. That's what I was for like the first year of the WeedTube. And then that label of CEO came with so many like assumptions from others about who I was and what I
Oh
was
yeah, for
and what my
sure.
meaning was for the world. And I just didn't identify with any of it. So I fully rejected that title publicly. I was like, I'm not the CEO. Like, don't call me that.
It's true though. I mean, when you think of a CEO, you think of someone, I mean, regardless of their like appearance, whether they're wearing a suit or whatever, you're thinking like business oriented numbers, like a type A, typically, I mean, all the above, right? Those kind of,
Right.
yeah.
And to be honest with you, like if I could just expand on this from an even wider lens just for a second. I don't love I've come into this thing. I'm 30 now. I'll be 31 in a month. I've come into this thing in like the last couple of years where like labels don't make sense to me. Like we're all living in this world and we identify like certain things and situations as what they are because people before us identified them as that. But who's to say that people before us knew any better? Because we're evolving constantly and society's getting better every day. So who's to say that someone 100 years ago knew better how to live and how to identify things than someone who lives today? So I'm very like anti-labels entirely in every way. As a gay person, I'm very blessed to be born into a world where like my life doesn't fit the societal norms. So I
Right.
was born into a world where I get to question reality often. And to me, the most blatantly obvious questioning of reality that should be happening in our like people like capitalism, people are like down with capitalism. It's like down with capitalism or down with the labels that define these people to be cutthroat and step all over other people just to make a dollar. Like I don't identify as a CEO because that label doesn't identify me, but with me, but I'm still the person who wakes up every day and makes sure everything gets done. But the
Right.
minute you tell someone that they are something, then they're going to operate differently in this world. So I just try to operate always in every aspect of life as a creative, as a business owner, as a leader without a label.
I totally agree with that. And I would take it a step further to even say, like, we also need to give the people that are on the outside of those labels being given that they're not always believing those labels. Like, you know
Mm,
what I'm saying? Like, there are CEOs out there that don't fit that type at all. And they're actually
mm,
probably really cool. And they're probably really good, like people persons, or I don't know any other way to say that, but they're good with interpersonal skills and they're good with getting things done that way by managing people, instead of
right.
maybe being numbers or so I would also just say that, in addition to labels, there are people that don't follow that. I'm one that doesn't prescribe to labels because I don't like labels. And and on the point of label, when we first started, you mentioned that people used to call you the gay stoner back on the YouTube days. So like now do you reject that label or did you embrace it? Like how do you feel about that now?
I will always love and admire that label so much. That's one label that I'm totally cool with. It's kind of like definitely where I'm at now with like 3 years into the WeedTube now. It's kind of like my identity as an individual creative where I was like just doing my own thing. That's kind of more dissolved now because from the greater angle, like my first identity to most people is like the WeedTube guy,
Right.
which sometimes
Right.
I hate and sometimes I love. Um, but I still think like I still make my own content on WeedTube. I have my own channel, and I very much think like the core of that like gay stoner person who was originally on YouTube, like that person's still there. You know what I mean?
Sure. It's more
Yeah.
of like your persona, right? Like, right. I get what you're saying. So tell me like what is in store for WeedTube next? Like, what are you guys excited about? I mean, obviously the pandemic has pushed more cannabis operators to go digital with e-commerce stores, online stores, and of course the push to digital content, which you guys are in prime position for. So how has the pandemic helped, and how have you had to pivot, and kind of what do you see in the future for WeedTube?
Yeah, that is such an interesting thing. If you would have asked me this question a month ago, such a different answer. And probably a month from today, maybe a different answer and hopefully a better one.
Right.
The pandemic really killed us. It really, really did. It was hard. We lost half of our advertisers immediately, being an advertiser-based platform,
Uh,
we lost half of our advertisers immediately, and then over like the next 6 months, we lost quite a few more. And then when the vape ban hit, which I'm not sure if you've covered on this podcast before, but basically like half of our advertisers were vape advertisers. One of them that had been around since the day we launched the WeedTube, the first ever sponsor we ever had for WeedTube was vapepartsmart.com. They had to close their doors a couple months ago because of this vape ban.
what's the
So
vape? What vape ban? Tell me about this.
we not know. Oh my gosh. So you remember that stimulus they did last year in
Yes.
November?
Uh-huh.
On page 5,361. That's
Oh,
not
they
the actual.
they rolled it out, right? It was that pile of, yeah, okay, I remember.
I
Yeah.
don't remember the exact page, but it's in the 5,000s, somewhere
Yeah.
in there. There's a page that is a vape ban, and it basically states that direct-to-consumer vapes can only be shipped if you verify the customer's ID, age, and get a signature from them. So that makes vape shipping costs more than the vape itself costs, which then immediately put out direct-to-consumer vaping out of
No
business.
shit. Oh man, they snuck that in there, huh? That's
Yeah, and
crazy.
the sad thing is it's really a lobbied power play for Juul to take back over the nicotine market in the next couple of months, because there's huge rumors going around that there's going to be an announcement from the federal government that nicotine does not cause cancer,
What?
but cigarettes do. And so it's going to be this resurgence of vaping in a healthy way, because remember when the whole like people were dying from vaping because of illegally sold THC carts in the
Vape
South and stuff like
Vape
that,
Gate. Yeah, Vape Gate. Yep, I
and it
remember
made
that.
vape stocks crash. Basically, Juul is lobbying to fix all of that and decline cigarettes, but increase their share of the stock. And so it's this whole nicotine thing that the THC world has gotten caught up in.
No shit. And so is that correlate at all with the recent announcement from the FDA about the ban on menthol cigarettes and I think even flavored e-cigs now? Like, does that play a part in it also, or is that something separate? Like, why is there all this talk about nicotine and cigarettes when cannabis and THC is on the sidelines still? You know, I'm
I
confused.
don't know. I don't know if the two things correlate. I only know specifically what I know. I was lucky enough to be invited to a meeting with some of the larger vape weed brands in the US, and kind of like with their attorneys when the whole thing was happening. So I just kind of have like a little inside ear on it. I'm not sure if that stuff correlates too.
Got you. Well, that's good to know, man. Yeah,
But
that's
as an ex menthol cigarette smoker, thank God over a year free of cigarettes now. Good. We should get rid of those things, man. They are.
yeah. I mean, cigarettes are bad in general for you. And you know, I can't imagine. I can't wait to see that report that you mentioned though, and how they're trying to claim that it's not the nicotine, it's the cigarette. But
Yeah.
yeah, because the nicotine is the addictive property within the cigarette, isn't it?
Correct, but and I think we've always like inherently, you know this, like nicotine, or tobacco, the plant that grows out of the ground just like weed,
Right.
that's not causing the cancer. It's the rat poison and everything else that you're putting in the cigarettes that are causing the cancer and making them so addictive. You know what I mean?
But yeah, I understand it. So is nicotine different than tobacco, or are they the same thing? Are they interchangeable like terms?
It's kind of like marijuana, THC, tobacco, nicotine.
Got you.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? Nicotine
It
is the chemical within the
it's
tobacco.
the compound within it. Okay.
Correct.
Got
Yes,
you. All right. See, I'm learning all kinds of stuff, Aaron. You're so knowledgeable, man.
I try.
This is why you're a content creator within the cannabis education space. Am I right?
Yeah.
So tell me what else is on top of mind as we wrap up here. You know, anything else
Oh yeah,
that
wait, but the pandemic thing.
oh
I
yeah,
didn't
go
I
back to
didn't
that. Yeah.
go through that whole thought. The the pandemic hurt us really, really bad. We literally were nearly going to have to close our doors about 2 months ago, which would have been the worst news ever. And luckily, we turned to our community and asked them for support, and they've been very supportive as well. But right now, as of right now, basically, all of this stuff with the pandemic has forced us into a complete shift in our business model, I guess. When we first came out with the WeedTube, we did it the way that we thought you were supposed to do it based on what other people were doing at the time. And now we're seeing new models all over the internet in different ways that show us a different way out for the WeedTube, which is community supported platforms. So we are currently in the middle of a huge transition where we want to go away from being a platform that has ads all over it within the cannabis industry to being a cannabis industry neutral platform that is supported by the users of WeedTube. So basically our angle will be to ask for users to sign up for our premium memberships, which will be $5 a month. If we hit a certain threshold of those, we'll be able to do some incredible things like constant web development updates, constant things back for the community, enabling creators to do bigger and more complex projects with funding for those things. It's actually insane that we ever thought that the cannabis industry was large enough to fund such an expensive website. It's very expensive to stream video. Like I think a lot of people don't realize that. It's like
it's the hosting costs, right? I mean, just the memory, the storage alone to just upload, host it, and then stream it is a whole cost in itself. And
you just described exactly what it is, because people will be like, what do you mean the WeedTube costs so much money? I have a website and it costs me $5 a month. Well, that's lovely, and I love your little e-commerce website for you, but you're not literally like taking on terabytes a month of other people's video and having that live in your place, that you're keeping it safe. That's the whole point, that no one can get rid of it, and also stream it to people's devices all over the world instantaneously.
Right.
All of them, because there's other websites too that are paywall websites like Curiosity Stream and Nebula and others. I pay $20 a year for Curiosity Stream, and they still cannot stream an hour-long documentary to my Apple TV without buffering 10 times. WeedTube does not have a problem. We have no buffering. You could be like in the middle of Australia in the outback, and you will get a WeedTube video delivered to you like that. And doing that is not cheap. I mean, back at our worst, I mean, it was like $25,000 a quarter, and that's, you know, we weren't making anywhere near that number. Right. So to sustain a video website like that is extremely expensive, and to think we could ever do it with this, you know, like smaller industry supporting it only, when we can't plug in Google ads or any other ads throughout the site to like sustain it, was crazy. But what's even crazier is if you have 10,000 people paying $5 a month to support the platform, that makes us more than enough money to sustain the site and make it better every month for people. And it was sort of like we never had that option revealed to us until we saw sites like BitChute and different areas around the internet doing that thing where they're saying, we have no ads, but we are supported by our community. As soon as we saw that being done by other people, we said, this is where the WeedTube needs to go. And now we're making a ton of changes across the board to make that happen. And we've gotten some also really incredible partnerships with some brands coming in with money. And instead of having ads all over the WeedTube, we're facilitating them to create incredible content with huge creators that aren't even on the WeedTube yet, and bringing them over to us.
Yeah.
So honestly, the WeedTube's true success point is just around the corner.
Yes, that makes so much sense. It really does. The subscription model is the way to go. We don't need to, you know, go back and rehash how expensive it is to manage and maintain a video streaming website like WeedTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that as you mentioned, if you can offer a higher level subscription model where people can come in and receive high quality content that's you know, more exclusive, or have additional features to really put them in a position of success when it comes to content creation within the platform, I mean, that's a win. And the partner idea is great, because you can never create too much content, and to have a variety from different businesses adding different value from different perspectives, I mean, that's a great option as well, man. So,
and two other points that are really great for this too is it's just the whole industry neutral thing, where now on WeedTube we can have a section of like related products, and like I don't know if you or your listeners out there are aware of like big trade shows in cannabis, like having a section of the WeedTube that is a virtual online trade show that's open to everyone and not just those who can pay to play to be there. Neutrality in the industry is important. And then also for the people who won't be paying for premium, because some people will never pay for it, and that's okay. they'll still have ads, but those ads now that are going to be running on the WeedTube are going to be for nonprofits like, the Last Prisoner Project. So like bringing awareness to issues in the cannabis community that we need to help with. You know what I mean? Like using those ad spaces for good for the community, actually being a neutral place for the community that is supported by the community,
Yeah.
that can't be swayed by certain brands' money or anything like that because they're supported by the community. That's our goal.
Another great point. You're being thoughtful about the advertisers you bring in on the free membership side, because like you said, you want it all to bubble up to the main cause and awareness, which is more access to the plant, awareness around people that have been treated unjustly and disenfranchised by the plant over the years. It's a great approach that you guys are taking. So that's all kind of in process right now, you mentioned, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, it's we have our new version of our app. We're not calling it 2.0 because the improvement of it is not enough for us to call it a full level up. That we look in about 90 days for a full 2.0. But we do have a new version of the app coming out that will be our first premium purchase option version. And so that's sort of like our turning all of this too, like kind of happened. We weren't really expecting it to happen this way. It's kind of crazy. It's like the last 2 months, it's like the whole focus just shifted. And it's weird because you'd be like, how is everything falling into place so perfectly for our team? We constantly are like, how is this all aligning so perfectly? But it's almost like in many ways, for many people around the world, in many ways of their life was this way a couple years ago, and it was supposed to be like a different way. And it's almost like the universe is like, okay, now I'm making you aware of where you're supposed to be. And you just have to sit into it.
Right, right. I mean, when I was telling this to friends the other day when we were out in the weekend, and it's like when I have kids, like when they're young enough where I can tell them like what happened in 2020, I'm gonna tell them like all about me growing up and athletics, and then 2020 the party stopped, and like it was just kind of all right, everybody sit down and reset. And that's where you said like you have to think about what your next move was. Are you focusing more on your health, your wellness, like your career path, your family, your relationships? It just kind of put everybody in a position to where you really think through where they're at in life.
Yep, that and deal with all your childhood traumas that you've suppressed for your entire life because now you're gonna deal with them.
That's right. That's right. And those quarantines were not easy,
They're really hot.
they were not. And but we did see that cannabis, right, in terms of consumption levels totally increased, almost to the levels of alcohol consumption.
And that's what people say all the time when the WeedTube was really struggling there. They were like, "What do you mean you're losing all your business? Cannabis sales are up." Yes, cannabis sales are up. Everything else, services and products relating to cannabis sales are down.
Right, right, exactly. Yep. Well, Aaron, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I do want to give you the floor, and let the audience, just hear your last thoughts and whatever's top of mind for you.
Sure, when you tweeted this morning about our episode, someone replied with a question that I thought was really good, and I kind of wanted to answer it. I can just peek again really fast and see what it was.
It was about, you kind of answered it, but I'm glad you called
Did
it
I?
out specifically. Go ahead. No, it was about
I got it
y'all's
right here.
advertising model and what you do
Yeah.
with people's content.
Yeah, FJ Burrows said, do they collect and sell user data? How do they make money? Do they sell ads, or am I the product that gets sold? So that's a great question, FJ. It kind of goes back to the whole point of I did not get into this for the money. We don't collect any user data at all. Probably should, not even to sell, just for reference
Insights.
points would
Yeah.
be probably a good idea. But we didn't even build that in because we were just like, make it work. We didn't think of all of that stuff. So currently not collecting or selling any of your data. In the near future, hopefully collecting as much of it as you're willing to give us. Never plan on selling it personally, especially if it's a community funded platform. Why would I take your money and then sell it to someone else? And then the second half of the question is, do they sell ads, or are you the product that gets sold? Meaning the two options here for him or for them are either we sell ads or we sell their information. Neither. Our future goal is to be community supported, and we don't sell anything. We just give the community a service that they deserve, because there's so much censorship around cannabis all across the internet right now. For example, I was just part of a huge initiative called Canna for Climate. I'm wearing the shirt for it right now. That
Shout
was
out.
a new stoner holiday that happened the day after 420, in which stoners, after smoking the whole planet, went out and cleaned up the planet the day before Earth Day. And it was a huge movement. People that I didn't even expect to be involved with it were involved with it. I saw posts all over the world, and Instagram suppressed the hell out of this movement. What would have been what would have been a viral movement in any other community or industry immediately got snuffed and pushed down by Instagram.
Aaron, I am plugged into the Instagram cannabis world every single day. I did not hear about that. That's insane, because I would have been part of that. That's an awesome movement. I love that idea. What's it
Yeah,
called?
it was called Canna for the number 4 climate. It's
Canna for Climate. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And they suppressed it, huh? Wow.
they suppressed the hell out of it. I mean, just for example, like 420. I don't know if you experienced this at all, but 420 week this year for me, I get on average, let's say a year ago, on average, I would get about 4,000 views a day on a bad day of my story. So like 4,000 people going and watching my daily story. On the week of 420, I could not break 400 people. And you want to, and Instagram can be like, if I was just there by myself experiencing that alone without other friends to compare and contrast to, I'd probably be like, no one likes me. It would send me into a spiral of depression. I'd be like, what am I doing wrong? I'd try to act out in different ways to get attention. But knowing all of my friends that are going through the exact same 10x decrease in viewership, there's only one person to point the finger at, and it's Instagram.
Right.
And that's not okay. Instagram does not have the right to gatekeep cannabis knowledge. It's either all or nothing. You delete everyone and restrict it all, or you let it all happen. Because the problem is they're letting some people get away with it, and it's only the people who come to pay to play, and that's not okay. You do not get to gatekeep that.
Here's the big question. I've asked this before, and like I get different answers. So like, what do you think it is? Do you think it's at these major platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, where censorship is definitely happening? Is it middle management, employees that have access to these tools that are just deciding this thing ad hoc? Or is it leadership that's dispelling that, or saying, giving these instructions, and there's an algorithm that's kind of not as accurate and just randomly doing this? I think there's some type of human intervention, is my opinion.
But
But
100% there's human intervention. It's not just, and even if it isn't just human intervention, a human created the algorithm.
right, so it's either or, you're saying, but it's either or. It's messy because, like you said, it's not like a full blanket. They're being very subjective in what content they're censoring and what they're not, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
100%. And what's to be expected from platforms that are literally built to be a drug to your brain? You know what I mean? Let's not sit around and act like any social media, except for maybe the WeedTube.
Dopamine,
Yeah.
it's what it's all about. That's the main drug that they produce, for sure. Yeah.
And wouldn't it be just so nice to see that? See, and this is one of the reasons why, going back to the earlier being a businessman thing, I'm not. But if I was, oh my gosh, I would love to develop, and I have so many great ideas for a mainstream social media that's not built to keep you engaged, but built to be what it is. Like, not, you know what I mean?
I do, but I don't, because I'm like, when you say that, like, I almost think that, yes, Facebook was built and correct if I'm wrong, I think that Facebook was built for relationships and to network online, right? It was like a digital way to have community. But
Mhm.
in turn, as humans, as we have more friends and we have more people trying to interact with us digitally, that's what triggers our dopamine. So
Mm.
I don't know if they did that intentionally or that was just a byproduct of the platform that they have now chased and kind of, made their core. But I think it
Well,
goes hand in hand,
the original dopamine part is okay. Like seeing your friends doing cool things, and having, and you doing cool things and having your friends interact with you, that's all fine. It's the developing it completely to have you be on it as long as possible, and to have you stay there, and to have you keep coming back. That's where the real problem is.
You
Dopamine's not necessarily a bad thing.
You nailed it. You nailed it. You're right, because and that's what they do, right? They find out what your behavior is, and then they send you notifications that to trigger you to get back on the platform. And I
Exactly.
I don't post a lot on Facebook a lot. and they know that. I kind of just peruse and I manage my pages. But what I do when I engage with people is I write happy birthday to them, friends, family, and that's what they do. That's the notification every morning at like 8:30, 9 a.m. Look at who the birthdays are. And that just immediately I'm like, okay, whose birthday is it today? Because I care. I want to say, you know, and that's what I've kind of noticed they do to target me. I don't know if
Mm.
you've seen any of that type of
I just
shenanigans.
was how can I ask how old you are? Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah. We're about the same age. I'm 32.
Oh, cool. So
Yeah.
when I was starting on Facebook, it was like I was in college. You know what I mean? Like we were like that
Same.
generation that got Facebook right when it started, and we were like the target because we were college kids. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
it was so cool back then, and it wasn't like this whole world where you were constantly comparing yourself to others and like feeling less than and inferior. And now Facebook is the worst for me because now that my whole family is on it, it's just become a repetition of the larger family dinner table
Get-togethers.
at Christmas where
Yeah.
everybody's talking about here's my accomplishments, here's my things, here's my values, here's what I've done better than everybody else, but no one's talking about what's really happening to them. It's just an expansion of that same dinner table at Christmas. And I fall victim to it too. Like I'll go on there and I'll be like, oh, here's my new car. And then I look at it and I'm like, who are you trying to impress? Who even cares? You know what I mean? Facebook is the worst for me personally. And then
The-
Instagram right behind it. I still have faith in Twitter. Um, and I appreciate apps like TikTok where they tell you to get off after a while. But TikTok is one thing that's like, it's just unrealistic because it's literally built to be a full on hour blast of dopamine.
Yeah. See, I haven't jumped into the TikTok waters, and I think I'm just gonna stay out of that pool because I'm not a good dancer. I'm not. I think it's entertaining, but I'm not into it. So, and I don't really consume content from that platform, so I'm okay with that. Twitter is like high school to me, because you just follow like your crowd. You know what I mean? And you share the same stuff and talk about the same topic, and kind of you get your little networks there. So I like Twitter. It's cool for conversational based. Instagram I would say is probably my favorite just because it's very visual, and
Oh,
you
I'm sorry.
the story component. Oh, did you see that was the other one, Russ? Yeah.
Oh no, I was gagging because you said Instagram was your favorite, but
Oh,
it's
I know, man. And then Facebook, probably my least favorite. Like you said, too many friends and family there, like just trying to flex. And it's nice to keep in touch with people, but it can get very ugly also. I think that of all the platforms during the pandemic, obviously you got your Twitter haters and the fights there and there, but that's kind of the nature of Twitter, right? It's ugly and good and beautiful and just crazy. But Facebook, I saw a lot of ugly come out of Facebook from the pandemic. A lot of people were just, spouting out their thoughts. I mean, which is fine, but they were very aggressive with it, and it just kind of, I don't know, put a bad taste in my mouth in certain ways.
definitely same. I think it's time for a new social media, and I think someone will come out with it. You know what I mean? I would like to have a social media that was more intuitively designed to where we're at currently with human evolution. For example, like
Hmm.
just people talk a lot about protecting your energy and it sounds like this whole spiritual thing, but it's true. Like if you're scrolling on Instagram, which my Instagram feed is it's awful. I just want a chronological list of people that I follow. I don't want Instagram to tell me what they think I need, but like I can scroll through 3 posts on Instagram and by the end of it feel inferior, out of shape, and ugly. And that's not, you know what I mean? Like that's not my reality. You know what I mean? Like
You try
comparing
to
others.
do you try to block that out though? Do you try to like go in with a different mindset, or is it just too much?
I always scroll through social media consciously now because I'm very aware of the effect that it has on me. And the minute I see something that's like makes me feel like, say, there's another content creator in the cannabis space who's like videos that are like long form videos like I like to make, and it looks better than mine. I will immediately if my brain starts going to like a comparison place, I immediately will put my phone away because I know that it's not a comparable and I know that it's like a different thing, but in that moment Instagram like pushes that on me and makes me feel less than. You know what I mean?
I do, and it's good that you do that. As soon as you feel that trigger and start feeling that way, you turn it off because
Yeah.
you're right. You get back to reality and you think it's not a comparison. It's not like everybody's made to be doing like be in the same sandbox, right? With content creation, cannabis education, and whatnot. But we all have our different styles, and
Yeah.
we're all adding value by spreading the word. So it's really a win-win right now, you know?
It's good to be inspired by other people and to like want better for yourself and like take good feedback from like what other people are doing and be like, oh, that's a good idea. I'd like to reflect that in myself. It's another thing when you look at someone and say, like, oh, I wish it's hard to say, but like I see, for example, like a lot of people on that are creators on WeedTube might look at that like there in the past there was like a bit of a pattern where people would see me on Instagram and make all sorts of assumptions about who I was because of my Instagram, and then like they might feel like that I might never like them or appreciate their content or any of these things because of what they're seeing on this social media app, when in reality my reality is I'm just worried about me. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right,
So like
right.
you just gotta like worry about you and take inspiration from where you can, but you can't compare yourself and let yourself feel like less than to other people.
You are 100% right. You're 100%. And that's just when you start to do that, you start going down a slippery road because not only are you thinking about what they're doing, you're not focusing on what you do best. You're trying to tweak things that may be outside of your wheelhouse. Like it just
Mm,
starts to get muddied and messy, right?
right.
And it's just always, and the other thing is consistency, right? If you can just like remain consistent in what you do, however you do it, like we talked about earlier, if you have like a structure or if there's just kind of chaos and madness with your way of going about it, you know, it's all part of the consistency and the overall message that you're putting out, you know.
And the beautiful thing is when you can start to recognize that part of you that sees other people doing something and then gets burst with like jealousy or feeling like you're less than, when you can catch that thought pattern, the greatest gift I've ever received in my 31 years of life was realizing that I'm not my thought patterns and that I am something,
Yes.
I'm the awareness of those thought patterns. So once you realize that and you're like, oh wow, there's a lot of thought patterns up in this head today, and you can just pull yourself into the moment and be like, I am separate from those things, you will be so much better off because of it.
It's enlightening, isn't it? It's kind of it's this burden off your shoulders that you don't have to carry anymore. You know, you kind of feel free almost.
We have so much rerouting of our brains to do now that we are not hunter gatherers surviving getting eaten by predator kind of like humans, like, you know what I mean, like we've evolved so much beyond that in like our ways of life. We don't have to constantly worry about survival, but our brains are still set that way, so you're constantly thinking about what's wrong with you, what you could do better, what's going to be your downfall, when in reality you got to evolve beyond that and just like be the consciousness that you are and like do with your life what you want to do with it, you know?
I agree. And wouldn't you say that a big part of that is the content that you consume as well? Like
You are what you consume. You
you
are what you consume.
you are what you consume on every level, whether it's you're eating, right? Whatever you intake, like physically, whatever you read, whatever you consume content online. I mean, it all kind of feeds to who you are. And
Right,
all those thoughts that you were talking about can also be they can be intertwined with what you're consuming, and that can be
right.
problematic.
Which
So
is like a thing in today's society where it's very important. Mental health awareness is incredibly important. Mm, but this whole side where we're sort of glamorizing it and making it cool to have these things, that's when I start to be like, well, maybe not. Like it's, I don't know about that, because you might be able to find a way out of that in the future. So let's not like rest on it and be like, this is the cool place to be. You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
Like I'm depressed and that's cool. You're depressed and that's okay. That's fine. But I don't know, the glamorizing of it in the 21st century is the thing I don't understand.
I don't either. It's very disturbing. It's like it's good to be open with it and it's good to be honest with yourself, but you should also be kind of, you know, trying to find a way to improve or get better, right? And not kind of be stuck and complacent in that mode of operation. I think that cannabis is a great remedy for that because with me, at least in my experience, when I consume, I've said this before, I'm more self-aware, right? I just kind of sit back and I'm more intentional about my actions, who I'm talking with, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking. And so I think that that's just another great aspect of the plant, along with, all the other endless benefits of it.
Yeah, we have to be conscious of everything that we consume at all times, you know what I mean? And even like I totally 100% agree with you on that. Like I made a commitment to myself, like for the next 6 months I'm only going to be if I watch any TV, it has to be like educational or informational programming. I don't like I love a good reality TV, but I also notice when I start watching a lot of reality TV that I pick up on dramatic little tendencies in my friendships and relationships where it's like you're looking out for like, like just these little dramatic things that don't matter in the real world, like the little toxicities of human beings. Like if I sit there and watch 90 Day Fiance Forever, then I look at the person that I'm dating in a different light and have different expectations when it's like, girl, just be, you know what I mean?
Right, and I'll admit, I'll be honest, my wife and I have our guilty pleasures too. We watch the Married at First Sight, and and then speaking of dopamine, The Circle is another one. And so you're right. I mean, if you consume yourself too much of it, you kind of get petty and you get kind of brought down to that level. But if you're conscious of what you're consuming, you're just kind of watching it as a perspective and just taking it for what it is, you're okay. It's just being conscious.
100% being present. I don't know if you're familiar, but Eckhart, anybody out there who ever, if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to know more, Eckhart Tolle, there's this book, it's called A New Earth. He teaches you how to be present in the moment and to get out of your head. Oprah did like 12 episodes of her podcast with him. It's life-changing. It's life-changing. I've read it 3 times now. It's so life-changing.
A New Earth. Okay. Yeah. I've been looking for a good read. So that I'm definitely going to add that to my list. Perfect.
Definitely check it out. I ordered a copy for everyone on my whole team at the WeedTube and everything. It's so worth it.
Love it. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for the recommendation. And Arend, again, really appreciate your time today, man. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It was a lot of fun. Let's bring it back, man. I think that in the future we're gonna start hearing some good news with safe banking and hopefully some guidance from the FDA when it comes to messaging with regards to sales and marketing materials. So at that point, when things change for us as content creators, let's have you back on, man. Let's chop it up again. This was fun.
Let's do. Definitely. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for listening. Bye.